Hey everyone, when I first started this channel, one of the very first videos I did was a 1-year owner's review of driving my 2015 Nissan Leaf. It turned out to be a very popular video, definitely one of the most viewed videos on the channel. And so today we're going to do a 5-year update. Yes, we're already at that point. It's actually a little over 5 years by a few months. Now, if you haven't seen that initial 1-year ownership video and want to check it out and see what my original thoughts were on the car, I'm going to link to that in the description below. Now, if you've seen the video before or are watching it now, you'll pretty quickly notice that that car does not seem to be the same as this car. They're different colors. So let me quickly address that before moving on. Yes, these are technically two different cars. The car that I leased in 2015 was a 2015 brand new Nissan Leaf, and I leased it for 36 months with the intention of buying it at the end of the lease term. That didn't really work out the way I had planned because there were some hidden costs and fees and just other surprises that really kind of turned me off. And so I started looking, at just buying another used Leaf entirely. Came across this car, but it's the exact same car down to the model year. It's still a 2015 Leaf. The only difference is this exterior color. And it does have the level 3 fast charging, which my previous Leaf did not have, so kind of an upgrade in that regard. So anyway, that's why this car looks different than the car before, but I hope you will agree and understand, me treating this as a 5-year review, because technically, I'm still have been driving a 2015 Nissan Leaf for 5 years. Anyway, moving on, I'll just give you my general thoughts first before we move into the car and kind of look at things in more detail. My thoughts and feelings on the car are still quite good, especially when you look at the car and at the way we're using it, which is as a commuter car. So if you're using it to commute to work or just to run errands around town and can live within the range limitations, the car still excels in that way. So this is the original smaller battery, the smallest Leaf battery, the 24 kilowatt hour, good for about 80 miles of driving. And so for us, that has worked. And again, we live within those limitations. So it's a great car for getting to work and running errands to the grocery store or whatever. I'm still generally a fan of the hatchback look and design. Say what you will about how the car looks on the outside, but I still like, just the way that the hatchback is built. It lends itself to more interior space. The trunk space is still pretty good. We can load it up with, a bunch of stuff. Seats fold down and all those kind of things. So, not as much room as you might get in an SUV, but still very space efficient on the interior and, still works for our purposes for the most part that way. Now, a big question people ask about used electric cars, especially after, several years of ownership, is how's the battery doing? How's the range holding up? Well, let's go inside and we'll just look at the gauge cluster and I'll show you exactly what battery information it displays for me. Okay, so I'm in the car now in the front passenger seat. This is just the easier angle to shoot from, the way the car's parked in the garage, but I'm going to turn it on and I'll get some video coverage of the screen so you can see what I am talking about. So we got the key fob on. I'm going to hit the power button twice to turn everything on. Okay, when we boot things up here, you can see now on the dash at 44% of a charge. I'm also coincidentally showing 44 miles of range on the range estimator to the right. Now that is just kind of coincidence. Someone that's not new to EVs, I wouldn't want you to think that the range always replicates the state of charge of the battery, because if I charge this car to 100%, I'm not going to get 100 miles. So, if I had this thing at 100%, I would probably be seeing about 86 miles of range estimated when I'm driving really efficiently. Sometimes I see that go into the 90s. But you can see that we have 27,580 miles on the car. And, this is the car that I bought used. And believe it or not, this car, I bought it like 2.5 years ago maybe, and it had 7,000 some odd miles on it at that point. So I've really only put 20,000 miles of my own on the car, but it had really low miles when I bought it used. And the car that I returned, that I leased and ended up giving back to the dealership, that car had like 32,000 miles on it. So I really got a deal on a low range car when I bought this one versus buying my Leaf back from the dealership at over 30,000 miles. Now, something that did happen with this car though is, and it's hard to see here, but on the right, in that range estimator section, you can see what are called the capacity bars. So you see two red ones at the bottom, and then there are several white ones above it. And because the thing's not charged to full, you can't really tell, but there is a little bar missing at the top there, one of those little squares, rectangle shapes. And that happened at around 15,000 miles on the car. And I even posted about it on our EV Everything Instagram. I was pretty upset at the time because, again, I had owned a Leaf that went over 30,000 miles, never having any capacity bars disappear. And then this one, relatively early on into owning it, suddenly dropped a capacity bar. And I felt so scared that I was going to lose like a bunch of range and that it was just going to keep dropping. So it's been a while, and I haven't lost a second capacity bar yet, and the range has been holding steady. So I'm optimistic that the battery health is good, and looking at it now, like 44% to still be able to drive 40 miles is good in my opinion. Now, something negative maybe to say about the car, now that we're sitting on the inside here, and these aren't things that have changed in 5 years, but the car has definitely aged in the infotainment screen area especially. And now this is the base model, this is the S, it's the cheapest Leaf that you could buy at the time. So there are higher res screens and larger screens on the higher trim models, but nothing close to like what we get today. I don't even know if they support Apple CarPlay and like Android Auto and that kind of stuff. But this screen is very basic, and it's got old stuff on here like an iPod menu for when you connect an iPod to the car. It's got a CD tray still, so I think this is the area of the car that has aged the most, and makes it, less likely for us to keep it in the long run. And my wife really, doesn't like driving the car because she can't, listen to Spotify or do any of her apps, through the infotainment screen. Even over the phone, the car only has Bluetooth for making phone calls. So I can, make and receive phone calls, and it's Bluetooth connected to my cell phone, but I can't play any music over Bluetooth. So it really doesn't have any of those features that, you would expect from modern cars. Otherwise, interior quality, a lot of hard plastic. Again, these are things that have been around, this isn't anything that's changed since I bought the car. But the seats are actually really comfortable. They're fabric seats, but I find them very, very comfy. They've held up really well, no tears. It's all black interior, but there's no stains or anything. I could get this car detailed and it would look almost brand new. Over here on the door, there's actually some soft touch material that I wish was, more spread out throughout the vehicle. But, here above the armrest, it's kind of like a softer, almost, leather material. Then it's hard touch on the top. And we do have a soft fabric that, again, is held up very well. No tears and no stains from people's arms on the side. The driver's side is very similar. It probably has like a little more wear on it just from me putting my elbow there. But it's held up really, really well. So I've been impressed with the interior of the car really holding up to 5 years of use and driving. Now, if I pop the charge port on the front of the car, we can see that there's two charge ports in the front. And so the one on the right is the normal level 1 and level 2 charge port that every Leaf would have, and basically every electric car has, in the United States at least. This is what that port looks like. And on the left is the level 3 CHAdeMO fast charge port. Now this is something that my first Leaf did not have, and so it's kind of an upgrade to buy this car. Now, honestly, I haven't actually ever used that level 3 fast charge port. I thought I might when I first got the car, but it's just never been a situation that I've needed to do that. I really don't take the car long distances, so really it's just never been used. But there is an added benefit, and if you're looking at used Leafs, this is something you might keep in mind, is that if you find a Leaf that has the level 3 CHAdeMO charger, so if you have both those ports on there, it automatically upgrades the internal charger of the car, so it actually charges at like 6.6 kilowatts or something instead of the standard 3.3. That's all kind of technical numbers. If you're new to EVs, essentially that just means that the car will charge faster, even on a level 1 or level 2 charging speed. So just simply having that automatically upgrades the motor, so I am benefiting from being able to charge the car faster, even though I don't ever use that level 3 charge port. And even if we look under the hood, which is something I never have to open, there's really not much going on inside, no maintenance to really have to worry about. Obviously not a lot of the components in here that you'd find on a gas car, no oil changes, no belts. And all I can really see here is, I guess, we've got window wiper fluid, and I guess maybe this might be some type of coolant, and then our 12-volt battery, which seems to be in good health. Again, I've never lifted the hood to alter any of these things, and the fluids usually get topped off when I take it in for tire rotations, which is about the only maintenance I have to worry about. I mean, it's that and changing the air cabin filter, but that's it. That's all I've done up to this point. Now, something else about the car that I'll say hasn't aged that well is the regenerative braking. I did a video on the regen features of this car and explained kind of how regenerative braking is something that's in all electric cars, to some degree, and that it slows the car down so that you don't have to hit the brake pedal as much. It does that on its own while also, using the kinetic energy to recapture energy and throw it back into the battery for some bonus range and miles. But the Leaf really is this older Leaf. Again, this would only apply to I think in 2018 is when the new generation of the Leaf came out. So any model previous to 2018 has these regen settings, and they're just not very strong. Now that I've driven more electric cars, our other vehicle is a Tesla Model S, and it has very strong regen. It doesn't come to a complete stop, but it's very, very strong. And you barely ever have to hit the brake pedal. And even stronger still is like the Chevy Bolt EV, which I've never owned, but I test drove once, and it comes to a complete stop. You put that thing into, it's called L or low, whatever the L stands for on the shifter, and you don't have to hit the brake at all. It comes to a complete stop on its own. So yeah, I would say that the Leaf hasn't held up as well in that regard, but the newer Leaf does have something called like e-pedal or e-power or something like that, and it is a stronger regen setting, and I think it does come to a complete stop. So newer Leaf does it, and older Leafs like this don't. You have two settings, the D and the B mode, and the B is supposed to be stronger, but even still it doesn't regenerate as much as some other EVs I've been in. So something that I appreciate in our Model S, very powerful regen. In the Leaf, not so much. So I hope you found this information helpful. Again, overall, I'm still very pleased with the car. It's a great commuter vehicle. Using it to run errands around town, it excels in that kind of short range environment. Now, I don't know how long we'll hold on to the car. I don't imagine we're gonna have it for 5 more years, but it is just one of 2 vehicles. So again, the Model S is kind of our long range car, and then this is really the workhorse that we try to put the miles on for doing stuff around town. Now, a future episode that I want to do is going to be focused on buying a used electric car. So this car was purchased used, and our Tesla was also bought used. There's some great deals out there on cars that are coming off lease, electric cars, because they've been around long enough. And so stay tuned for a future episode focused just on that and some of the things to look for when buying a used electric car. And I think we'll probably do another video just on our Tesla Model S alone, which has been a very big upgrade, going from a Leaf to a Tesla, as you might imagine. So I hope you'll stick around, and I'll see you in a future episode.